Hi, this is John from Flat Cat Gear, and today we're doing a comparison test between the Jetboil Stash and the MSR Titan Kettle with a PocketRocket. Now, there's a lot of reviews out on the Stash, so I'm not going to go into details about that. You can see those reviews. They talk about weights and everything. What I'm interested in is performance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some testing. Windtunnel testing between the two to see where the differences are, because we've heard reports that the Jetboil Stash doesn't perform that well in the wind. Now I'm going to give a shout out to Fossil Bluff, who is over on Trek Light. He did some experiments where he did a lot of testing at room temperature conditions and at 5 miles an hour, and found out that the Jetboil Stash didn't perform well at 5 miles an hour. So I wanted to repeat that test, because it's always good to see, collaborate the work that he's done and to see if you get similar results. And I was going to go at a finer resolution. I was going down to lower speeds, and there's a couple other things I wanted to look at. The idea that AHX heat exchanger pot, like the Stash, should be more efficient, it's proven out to be pretty true at ambient conditions. Titan Kettle will boil 500 milliliters of 20 seawater and using about 9 grams or so. The Jetboil is about 7, so there's about a 30% increase in improvement, and that's probably due to the AHX fins on this thing. Very comparable systems. They're both about 850 milliliters. Stash came in at 203 grams as I've configured it. The Titan came in at 209 grams, so they're basically identical. Another key difference is that the Stash is an unregulated stove, and the PocketRocket has micro-regulation. Now, even though I'm talking about the PocketRocket, could have probably easily used a Soda Windmaster or a number of other micro-regulated stoves out there. So I just picked the PocketRocket2 because in the United States it's probably the most popular canister top stove out there. Jetboil has done something interesting with their stove. As I said, it's an unregulated stove. In general, unregulated stoves, when you have a fresh canister, if you turn it all the way up, it blasts like a jet engine. It's really loud. And you really throttle it back probably about 50% or so. That's not the case with the Jetboil. The Jetboil, you actually have to turn it up pretty high with a new canister, and that presents some issues, and I'm going to talk about those in a minute. Let's talk about the wind tunnel testing. So here's a chart, and there's a lot of data on this chart. So take a look at this chart, and it's really interesting. If you look at it, the top line is the PocketRocket with the Titan Kettle, and you can see it starts off fuel efficiency pretty good. It goes up high, but it stays kind of flat, and it goes up a bit. Now, this is the interesting part. When you look at the Stash has very good fuel efficiency up to about 4 miles an hour wind. What happens at 5 miles an hour is it just falls off a cliff. When I did the testing, I had it boiling I had the stove on for about 10 minutes, and it only got up to 150 degrees, and so I shut off the test and I extrapolated out, and at 5 miles an hour it would have taken about 27 grams of fuel to boil. So that's a significant problem there. The second thing I noticed, and this was an odd one, was of course I have a bunch of different canisters. I saw the performance drop off with pressure in the canister. So what would happen is, if I had a canister, now I'm using these big 1 pound canisters, so if the pressure would drop off, I would try and turn the stove up. Now in a regular unregulated stove, you have a lot of headroom. Like I said, you start off maybe at 50% or so, and so you can open it up and open it up and open it up. Not the case with the Jetboil. The Jetboil already, you're pretty much maxed out at the start, so there's very little headroom. So I found out that if you measure the time to boil, now again, this is all wind tunnel testing, at about 4 miles an hour, if the canister pressure was high, you got a pretty good boil time. If the canister pressure was low, it almost doubled the boil time. Because the Stash is an unregulated stove, the way they designed it was with a new canister, you're operating up to almost, say, 85–90% of full open. And so when the pressure drops off, you've got no headroom to go. So now again, with this large canister, it's somewhat sensitive to that. The problem comes in is when you take a little 4-ounce canister, because the pressure drop in a 4-ounce canister is going to be significant compared to a 1-pound canister. So you're going to see a lot more sensitivity to output, and that can be seen in the boil times that I've showed you. Additionally, not only is it cooling, all my testing was done at about 60 degrees. So it's known that when you start getting into colder temperatures, you're going to be even more sensitive. So in my view, bottom line is Stash is a fair weather stove. It's good, it's great below 4 miles an hour. Above that, forget it. It just doesn't work well. Your Jetboil Stash works perfectly with a fresh canister. Problem is, you're never going to always have a fresh canister, so the performance grade degrades as the pressure drops, and that, coupled with cold temperature impacts and a number of other things, really relegates Stash to a fair weather stove. So come visit us at www.flatcatgear.com.